2021 was actually a year of possibilities. Lots of stuff shifted.
For me, the big word for 2021 is collaboration and working together.
It's definitely challenged all aspects of Te Whare Tapawha, our dimensions of well-being.
Agile and positive way of moving through it, hopefully, will turn good results.
Up and then down and then up and down, and then here we are.
So when COVID re-emerged in 2021, there was a lot of conversation about climate change and biodiversity and inequality, and these were really big issues. And we were really worried that was going to derail this whole conversation. But what's amazing is that we just stepped up. The business community was starting to question what it was doing and the role it was going to be playing. It's not just business working with business now, it's business working with mana whenua, working with council, working with government agencies, working with philanthropy. You know, the sectors are all coming together. We've just been seeing this massive emergence of great people doing great things across New Zealand and across the world.
This has been a huge news year for climate change. It seems like a lot of the talk about doing things or doing reports has come to fruition. Very early in the year, we had the Climate Change Commission's draft report, and there was a huge appetite from our readers to see that broken down into the ways that it would affect them. We had a huge IPCC report out updating the physical science of climate change, and there's nothing quite like seeing hundreds or thousands of peer-reviewed pieces of science synthesised in a really hard-hitting way to show you exactly how bad things are already and how urgent that need is to take action. I think the school strikes were really powerful. I mean, they were among the biggest protests that New Zealand has seen ever. When they have the power and when they take over, I think we'll see quicker change.
I think the reason that a lot of young people, do go to strikes is because their voice, which is obviously so important to people, can actually be heard. With adults, if you have an issue with the way that things are being run, you take it to the polls, you vote for the change you want to see. But young people don't have that, and young people have never had that. If there ever is any hope, it is with young people.
I think a lot of rangatahi that are getting involved in this sustainability space, it comes from a place of frustration. It's been really cool and exciting to see Dempsey Wood adapting and pursuing more sustainable outcomes. Yes, it's been a really cool internal cultural shift that we've been seeing. It takes a lot of bravery, but for me, in the sustainability space, I try and bring along as many young people as I can. I do that through my marae and trying to engage rangatahi, and that's really important to me so that we have this kind of succession plan of where we go in this space.
A common worldview amongst Indigenous knowledges is that we see ourselves as a part of nature, not apart from nature. And of course, the health and well-being of the environment depend upon the health and well-being of our people and vice versa. And the key thing there is that in that Indigenous worldview, in that Māori worldview, people have a responsibility to protect and sustain the environment. So whilst it's been challenging being locked up at home during these lockdowns, in effect, what it has been is a rahui on our activity in the oceans. And what that has meant is that suddenly all the creatures of Tangaroa have been multiplying, they've been appearing, they've been coming as if by magic. And the power of just doing nothing for a time has been really, really brought to bear.
Te Papa Atawhai now describes the work that we're doing as working towards a goal of Papa Tuanuku thriving. We're looking to describe our environment from a Te Ao Māori perspective, but in a way that is really reflective of our identity as South Pacific nation. So the Jobs for Nature program was really set up as a response to the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Through Jobs for Nature, we've supported many groups delivering the Partnering to Plant program that's enabled a whole lot of smaller community groups across the Motu to participate in community-led restoration projects. Many of the groups that we're working with have got really strong links to tangata whenua in their respective areas, from Ngāti Hini in the north down to Ngāi Tahu in the south. They're participating in these projects and playing a leadership role.
At the moment, the beauty industry produces 120 billion units of packaging every year. It's the industry's single largest contributor of carbon emissions. And so it was just completely logical to us that moving towards a circular model of operating was the only way forward, and that you can also be profitable by running a model that is truly what it is to be a sustainable beauty brand. Jane Kuro had been someone that I had looked up to, wrote speeches about at school. I wanted to share with Jane the work that we had done and how much she'd inspired me, not thinking that she would even reply. And she came back to us and said that she would love to stand by the work that we've done. So a lovely little relationship developed from there.
At Citizen, our first challenge is based on New Zealand's most wasted food product, which is bread, to the tune of 29 million loaves domestically, and taking that resource that has historically been dropping straight out of the food production cycle, turning those products with the help of some great people into second life products. That is the first step of circularity, is interrupting or disrupting that linear, and then taking and upcycling it into another product. So hence the bread into beer into bread circularity of our story. Through collaboration and working with experts, we believe you can actually heighten and get through that learning phase and get a quality product onto market in a quicker and a better way. But it also gives our brand that credibility in its early stages. Having that endorsement of the sawmill logo on our beer can or that wild wheat logo on our bread bag, we think is a good endorsement for that consumer. So we think collaboration is a really good thing.
New Zealand produces enough food to feed about 40 million people. We are an export country. But all along the way, from really right the paddock right through to retail, at times, there's a lot of food that's surplus. Surplus for many different reasons. It's not perfect, and we as consumers don't want that. There's packaging issues, there's labelling issues, there's just demand issues. And then obviously beyond retail and hospitality and at home, there's a lot of work being done. We see ourselves as solving two big problems. So the environmental menace that food in landfill is, and the social opportunity where people who, for whatever reason, really are struggling to put a good, nutritious, adequate plate of food on the table for them and their families. So we kind of bring those two together by rescuing and redistributing that surplus food.
The Sustainable Food Co. We are an event catering company based here in Auckland, and we're on a mission to excite and inspire Kiwis to eat more sustainably. And so we have a 100% plant-based menu. We reduce our packaging, recycling, any of that stuff as much as possible, and we're very proud to contribute absolutely zero waste to landfill throughout our entire process, from sourcing to cooking to serving. As we've been growing, obviously more people have been interested in getting catering, and a challenge that's come with that is more people not feeling super comfortable having 100% plant-based catering at their event. And so what we've done for that is we have started doing sampling sessions and just getting them to try some of the more unfamiliar foods, such as the cashew-based feta, maybe the crispy satay tofu, things like that. And I do believe that through food, through each and every meal, we do have a choice to choose a meal that can benefit the environment as well as our own health. And equally, it can and should taste delicious. So that's why we do what we do.
Our sustainability journey started with Impact Escapes, which was a responsible travel company. And during the lockdown in New Zealand, we were actually doing training with the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. And after that sort of period, we realised that travel wasn't coming back anytime soon, and we needed to look for an alternative.
We'd visited the tea plantations in Sri Lanka as well and seen the source of a lot of the tea and also the welfare of the workers in the tea plantations.
We literally got together after lockdown and said that, what are we going to do next? So it sort of made sense that the answer was staring us in the face, because we'd always get together and drink Sri Lankan tea.
And big tea drinkers.
Yeah.
But all good. We've been fortunate to be part of the fair trade system, and that makes sure that our growers are getting paid a sustainable wage, that their kids are going to school, that they have access to free medical, and that they're getting a sustainable price for their produce. So 2021 for All Good has been a really interesting year. We've moved into the plant-based added value category, and we're now producing oat milk, and our long-term goal is to produce organic oat milk in New Zealand with New Zealand grown organic oats. We've found this very successful, and consumers are really getting behind it.
Our values at Chia Sisters are sustainability, innovation, and nutrition. And these are really our personal values that are reflected in our business. For example, when we moved into our new factory in 2018, we lined that factory with solar panels to become New Zealand's first solar-powered juicery. We're also Nelson's first living wage employer, and we're also zero carbon and climate positive. So what that means is that we've measured our carbon emissions to find our carbon footprint. We've reduced those carbon emissions as much as possible, and then offsetting those through the Ramika forest, which is a really beautiful carbon sink over the hill from us in Takaka.
As a New Zealand-owned organisation that's been around for a very long time and a large carbon emitter, we do have a responsibility to lead in this space. Some of the wins that we're seeing in there already is our internal fleet. We're starting to migrate across onto EVs fleets now. And the initiative with the EV incentive plans for our 1,200 contractors up and down the country to have an opportunity to convert their vans as they come due into EVs is something that we're starting to see momentum coming on right now as well.
We also look at the packaging that people can buy at our retail shops. And through quite an in-depth analysis, found a lower carbon option, which is a recycled content mailer made in New Zealand, that we've now introduced into all our packaging. And little steps like that all add up to reducing our carbon emissions.
Zealandia is a fenced eco-sanctuary based in Wellington. It's got a 500-year vision to restore the Sanctuary Valley to its pre-human form, or as close as possible to it. And one of our big priorities is actually looking outside the fence and working on how we can transform the way people live with nature. So over the last 18 months, I've connected and learnt from people across the world. And I would never have had the opportunity to learn from international people like I have done before Zoom was commonplace. I've seen how much incredible work is being done worldwide to drive sustainable business. That's been a big aha moment for me.
We have a restoration project happening here in the Aotearoa Farewell Spit Wharariki area of Golden Bay. So we're the largest employer in this part of the world, and we really felt called a few years ago to really start taking more leadership in the restoration of the natural environment here. So for us, it was something that we could really make a strong commitment toward, get our team involved, just really see some great, meaningful conservation outcomes.
For a very long time, the concept of investment was around making money and managing the risks, and the real world impacts were considered irrelevant. 2 years ago, about 2% of KiwiSaver funds excluded out fossil fuels. We've been lobbying on that. Other people have been doing so as well. That's now 19%. So far more options are available for investors to be able to go fossil free. Similarly, we did some calculations, say how much money was going into nuclear weapons manufacture from KiwiSaver. It's $100 million a few years ago, and now that's virtually nothing. So in this transparency process, we're able to bring the glare of publicity and the glare of disclosure onto these kinds of investments, and we're getting real progress in terms of shifting where money is going.
Community finance came about as the result of a group of us observing the quite significant complexity and the crisis that's occurring in housing in New Zealand. And really what we were trying to do is to create a structure that could match up the huge amounts of capital that are available in the New Zealand system at the moment, billions of dollars looking for a home, with proven solutions providers like community housing providers and the like. So just matching the money and the projects where we can deliver better social outcomes and better environmental outcomes in the housing system in New Zealand. The magic in our world really comes from hearing the personal stories of the families who are moving into these homes. And that's the magic for us in terms of working together to achieve those sorts of outcomes.
Toha itself means to spread abundance widely amongst many people. And that's really what we're looking to do. In order to sort of power the regenerative economy, you do need to reward regenerative activity. That currently doesn't happen in our existing economy, and that's really where we come into play. One of those big moments this year is when we hosted the Prime Minister to a regenerative farm in Northwood in the Hawke's Bay, and it was just really exciting to see the change that's taking place on the ground as this farm moves from conventional agricultural practices to regenerative practices. Those of us that are managing land or making decisions out there, we can't sit back and just wait for the government to solve these problems. We've got to move forward as fast as we can.
In February of last year, catastrophic climate change-fueled wildfires tore their way across Eastern Australia. The smoke cloud was so big that the sun turned red in my own homelands. In that moment, our health was bound to the struggle of the land and people in another country. In the impacts of climate change, our fates are intertwined, as are the historic forces that have brought us together today.
The key part of the COP is the negotiations, but 190 countries in the room for 2 weeks or so working through the agreement and almost sort of sentence by sentence and coming up with a consensus at the end.
Many people I talk to, they have this clear-eyed intensity of how big and dangerous the task is and how short the time is. But secondly, they have a high degree of creativity about the solutions they're trying to work on with others. But thirdly, they're very actively seeking alliances, partners, people they can work with on all this. The tasks that humanity has to pull off over the next decade are truly enormous. But it's been in the last little while, and particularly here, that I have found a new sense of hope that we can do this.
This is an invitation to you. Learn our histories, listen to our stories, honor our knowledge, and get in line or get out of the way. Kia ora. Thank you.